to a Plan for That podcast with Erin and Vince, where each week we are going to help create a progressive media platform to grow the progressive movement by electing people up and down ballot and change the world. Each time you tune in, you'll hear Vince and myself give you our 2 cents on the crazy news cycle. And we're going to meet with progressive leaders and activists so that we can elect an army of progressives and have big structural fun together. Are you all set to meet Erin and Vince? I'm Erin, a recently activated lightning bolt of energy that demands progressive change. I won't back down, and I bring the crowd with me. Vince?
Hi everyone, I'm Vince. I'm a recovering journalist turned political activist and policy advisor here in the Rocky Mountain West, and I'm very excited to help everybody take their energy and help actualize it into real change and real action. And thanks for joining us each week, especially in these wild, wild times. Erin, how are you doing right now?
So pre-show, Vince and I were talking, and I was just convinced that I am not alone in what I'm about to say here. I know that this is a hard fight. I know with the current news of us warring against the Republicans on the Supreme Court pick, that things can feel a little dark out there. And before we get too far into what our plan is and what our plan of action is, I just want to share with you that I feel that the poem Rise by Maya Angelou should be a required reading. I'm going to abstain from reading it out loud because as a white ally, I don't want to co-opt the fight and struggle that ancestry of people of color and women of color certainly have faced. But I know that this poem is going to speak to you, and it's something that's given me a fire in my step and the will to go forward. The other thing I want to say, just to bring a little humor to the situation, because we all need to laugh.
More than ever.
I come from a rural area down south in Illinois. I've lost that accent and definitely co-opted the Chicago accent, but there is a phrase that everyone may or may not have heard that is a hit dog hollers. Now, number one, I would never hit a dog, but that is the phrase. A hit dog will holler, okay? So I want you to really think, what would a traitor do, okay? This is a traitor in the White House. This is a criminal. He is going to fight tooth and nail, dirt and slime from now until January 2021. And I really want people to understand that. We've only just begun. We can do it, but we need to saddle in. It's going to get rough. It's going to get bumpy. And yes, we're going to need each other.
My heart rate is up. I feel like I am ready to run a mile. I am simultaneously anxious and fired up. Ready to go is the response to that these days. You know what? I also want to say that I'm really grateful for that we have this show and that we found a pace with it right now, because when the news of everything over the weekend, especially about Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, broke, one of the very first things that came to mind was that we were actually going to be able to, come up with a plan, and because what are we going to do now is obviously the first thing that entered my mind, and I went to Twitter, obviously, because that's where all of life's answers are, is on that horrible website, and I went to Twitter and I was like, what are we doing? And there was a call to remember her in my local park to go to. And I was like, cool, that's probably the right thing to do right now. But at the same time, I was already texting with Erin and with other people, like, okay, but on Monday, what are we going to talk about doing? Like, it's good to take the time to remember, but people are going to be feeling desperate. And I mean, it's good that we opened the show talking about that, is that desperate feeling of what do we do, and is it over? Is it over?
Boy, I sure wish it was, but we've only just begun, and it's not just a 70s song, it's our reality. So for those of you who are way younger than me, don't look up that song. It's really, really bad. Anyway, I will say that the Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing had me in a tailspin, not just because we lost an icon for women's rights, for equality, for justice, but it also solidified the fight in me. If this woman, beloved woman, can go through pancreatic cancer bout after bout after bout and continually fight for us, I most certainly can do a heck of a lot more than screaming into the void on Twitter. Fun though that is.
It is fun. It is fun. But I mean, it's funny that you bring that up, because for so many people, I was thinking about breaking points before RBG passed, and I was thinking about specifically the Pence aide who was citing and endorsing Biden's campaign because she saw his mistreatment of the COVID pandemic as her personal breaking point. And I was like, how does it take this far for somebody to finally wake up and realize? And then over the weekend, a lot of people who I hadn't seen in a long time were suddenly back on my Signal and back in my DMs asking for where to go and what to do when RBG died. And I feel like for the left, that was kind of also another breaking point of, oh, we have to stay in this fight. Like, it's not going to be as good as just fighting for our getting our ballot in right now. We have to remember to do a little bit more, because they've been doing a little bit more on the other side for a very long time.
You're so right, Vince. And that was something that we also talked about pre-show, which if you're feeling like things are hopeless and there's not really much that you can do, there is always something that you can do. And it's called, as I said on my Twitter account earlier today, at wellness4u13, do the next good thing. If that's making calls, if that's sending texts, if that's recruiting other volunteers so that you're not working on 5 campaigns all at the same time like I am. But if you drive your energy from that, then feel free to do that too. And one of the things that people like me who are a little bit unique in that we're in a blue state, and it's like, well, I don't really have to lobby my senators because they're already on our side, you can do a heck of a lot to help flip some seats so that more people will be able to say, guess what? My senators are already on my side. The other thing that you can do is to make sure that you're looking down ballot. And I cannot stress this enough. Kieran Sung, also on our episode 2, talked about how powerful these little races that don't get the national play and don't get the national ads, they really add up. And in this case, someone pointed out on Twitter, and I just want to throw this out to you, Vince, that the Supreme Court wouldn't actually get the cases if we had the legislative bodies in the lower courts, the lower districts, i.e. flipping all the seats. What do you think of that?
You know, down ballot organizing is the name of the game right now, and it's what we need to be doing to. It's unfortunately a game of catch up that we are playing very late in the game, and we are witnessing the end results of. There's also, you know, super fun larger organizing efforts to undertake and other grassroots ways to help build the coalitions that we need and build around party support, especially with the found efficacy of ballot initiatives and actual people driven movements right now. And I'm excited, definitely excited to talk to our guests today who are going to be able to help us fill in some blanks on how to get started on doing that, or how to find the resources and how they exist locally to you.
Excellent. And then the last tip I want to give everybody, if you haven't seen the Rachel Maddow episode that aired last night, i.e. Monday, I strongly urge you to watch it. Number one, our fearless leader, Elizabeth Warren, has called out the very last words she said were literally, stay in the fight. So that's the message. That's the motivation. And I also want to make sure that people understand and heard Senator Whitehouse when he talked about how this whole thing, this whole push, this stealing seats and rushing nominations, all kinds of stuff, all of that is backed by big money. And most importantly, dark money, because nobody knows where it's come from and nobody knows exactly who's involved. So the more that we can do to elect progressive candidates who reject big money and reject big PACs, the better off we are. And that's why on this show, that's who we endorse.
100%. And always, we need to get big dark money out of politics. We need to, be able to look clearly at who is influencing campaigns. And we need to be able to see, our courts are being stacked against us for generations after my 3-year-old daughters, which is just, hard to think about right now. But I am excited to nail down and get into the nitty gritty about what we can do locally and on the ground after a quick break. How about you, Erin?
I'm excited too. We'll see you on the other side.
I've always loved Mississippi, and I'll never stop fighting for it. I'm Mike Espy, and I was among the first black students to integrate my high school, so I know how much that Mississippi has changed. But with her talk of public hangings and glorified Confederate symbols, Sidney Hyde Smith is hurting our ability to recruit new businesses and jobs because it gives the impression that we haven't changed. I approve this message because I'm running to keep Mississippi moving forward.
Hey everybody, welcome back to A Plan for That. Our guests today are Megan and Melissa from Toledo Persists, and I'm very, very, very excited to have them on the show this week. Toledo Persists is a grassroots, backyard activist group of volunteers working to elect progressives up and down the ballot. Megan and Melissa, they met way, way back at a Warren Barnstorm training session back when Elizabeth was running for president, and the world made a little bit more sense in October of 2019. And out of the remnants of the campaign, we have Toledo Persists forging forward. Welcome to A Plan for That, Megan and Melissa. Hi.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
We are so excited to have you guys. And as I was saying during our break, I'm selfishly hoping that our listeners really key into your story so that they can replicate it all around the nation.
Yes, we are ready to help them do that.
So first, obviously, let's let our listeners know why they should try to replicate your efforts, because they are impressive. You're heroes right now to Erin and I, but tell us a little bit about Toledo Persists. Like, what's really going on that side of the beautiful state of Ohio?
I don't want to talk over Megan because Megan has a lot to say, and I can literally roll right over her.
I do. I want to hear you do the intro pitch though, because that will help me know where we're going.
Oh, okay. Well, like Vince said, we started out as a Warren team, and we were all in for Warren. We were working hard. We learned a lot from their regional campaign director, who was based here in my house. Like, we had running the campaign from right here. So we got a lot of experience. And one thing I would say is the campaign drew people here, of course. So we had this sort of core group of women. And really, we are persisters. So just because Warren had to drop out, we weren't gonna, take our toys and go home. We just rolled on because it's about making that big structural change. So, then of course the COVID hit, the pandemic hit, and everything was shut down. Megan came up with the idea of us meeting by Zoom, and we were doing some Zoom meetings just to stay in contact and doing some letter writing that Megan brought in for Swing Left, and that kept us connected. But then as the summer came on and it became a little bit safer and everybody's more comfortable to be out, we decided to start meeting in person in my backyard, which I have created a space. And you don't need a special space, but you need some space. So there is space in the backyard that we can meet safely outside. And so we just started drawing people back. We have a Facebook group that we always had. We rolled our Warren Dems into the Toledo Persists. Megan handles most of our social media. And so she did that. And then we decided to start a Save Democracy Saturdays and just start meeting on Saturdays. We had 13 Saturdays to go when we started meeting in person again. And we have been doing all of the typical stuff, the phone banking, the lit drop, the texting, postcard writing, a few letters to the editor. But the other thing that we do that's really brought us a lot of people is the kind of the resistance work, we call it, the Banksy type stuff, the signage, how would we describe that, Megan?
Well, you know, the
performance art.
Performance art, we called it like guerrilla art. Like
yeah.
The last thing we did, we called it like guerrilla pop-up art, because it was something that that just popped up. We just put it up and then we took it down and left. But
I would say that's really fun. So that draws people to us and keeps them coming back. It's the number one thing people that they enjoy doing with us. So, and it's not that they won't do anything else, but when you're having fun, my background's in entertainment. So when you're having fun, it's much more sustainable. Recently, this past Saturday, we had our first big collection of performance art where we did a big march. We have painted 100, we call them tiny Trumps. They're about 4 feet high. They're shaped like Trump with the ridiculous cartoon hair coif going out. And each one of these tiny Trumps has a saying on it, something either related to COVID, to Russia, or something that needles Trump. But it all has a theme that's all been brought together. And we marched those Trumps about 2 miles in sort of a conservative area.
Ooh.
And then we planted them in a field like an army battalion taking over.
Yeah, an army of tiny Trumps is something that would just be born of nightmares, I think. I'm a little worried to go to bed now tonight. Like the cute baby Trump balloon, absolutely. But do we have to be so, I mean, scary definitely works, and big structural fun inside of all of this definitely works too. Like, I think one of the most successful things that we did when I back way on organizing for Team Warren on Twitter was when we started creating Fun Twitter in the summer of 2019 to like combat all of the, you know, just bad stuff going around. So I think fun activism should be the name of the game, and I think it's awesome to hear that people are showing up for that, and, you know, staying for the letter writing and the postcarding.
Yeah, I wanted to say, because sometimes people are going to be like overwhelmed. They're like, how can I start this? You know, first of all, you can join another campaign, but the campaigns all need staging areas. So they need places to send their volunteers where they can pick up the lit. So at the very least, you could be a location for that. And then those people will be coming. So you can work with those volunteers that come. You can, if you grow it like we grew it, then you can get the campaigns themselves to work synergistically together. We had a big beginning of one of our campaigns did their opening lit drop last weekend, but they also just took out lit for another campaign. Just, you know, it was in minivan and in mobilize and whatever. So they just took everybody else's lit. Because why? You just got the manpower, the woman power there. Why waste it?
You said a word that I absolutely love hearing, because it's one that I've been repeating over and over and over, but a lot of listeners might not know what it is. Minivan. Because I think that lit drop is currently like, that's how we're all locked inside still. There is still a plague, but we're allowed to go for long walks. So go on a 4-hour-long lit drop and let minivan be your guide. What is minivan?
Well, minivan is an app that you use and plug, you know, you basically plug a turf number into it, and off you go. It basically lets you know where you're dropping lit off, and you just spend an afternoon walking through a neighborhood that you don't know, but you kind of do because you're on minivan.
Well, here's another tip. Like, the minivan has all the addresses that you'll be dropping lit at, but I requested the campaigns that we work with to send us turf that's in close to us and close to the areas where our volunteers are. I asked the volunteers to give us their addresses so I could then have turf cut in their own neighborhoods. And that's easier. So once you have the volunteers, you try to make it as easy as possible for them. And they like it. They can see their own neighbors. So it's fun. You want to make it fun and sociable, and then that becomes sustainable.
So would-be activists and would-be volunteers, it is essentially on-demand action. in your pocket, in your phone, that same thing that you are playing Angry Birds and virtual farming on, you can pull it out and just request Democrats to go visit and remind that there's an election coming up, and that today we are recording this on National Voter Registration Day. You could, through Minivan, be bugging every single neighbor that you have who has voted blue in the last ever, and remind them to update their registration, because the most important election of their lifetime is only a handful of weeks away right now. So Minivan, if you haven't heard of it, download it and then get in contact with your local campaign and say you have it, and they will give you the rest. I promise.
I just love how this is driven by women. There's a quote out there, and I tweaked it just a little bit. Apparently, I thought it was a special quote from somebody, but apparently I just made it up. The actual quote was, "Never underestimate a woman." But what I said was, "Never underestimate the power of pissed off women." And I have a feeling that people are going to hear us roar like they never have before.
Absolutely.
I hope so. I'm definitely mad.
Yeah, we're mad. You know what I wanted also to say to people, like, it's overwhelming, right? We think we have to do everything. You're looking at the broad national strategy, but your job is your local area. My job, Megan's job, our job is not even just Ohio. We're going to bring home Northwest Ohio, everything that we're doing here. And we practice trickle-up politics. So when we work on the down ballot, these candidates that we are working hard for, turning out the voters for, they are also going to mark their ballot for Biden. So it's going to go up this time. We have been working for trickle-down politics for too long, and that has not fed our bottom-up machine. That is what supports. This base is what supports the top. So if you practice the trickle up, you are going to create a community. It's going to be sustainable. You're going to enjoy it. You'll feel empowered. It isn't hard. I mean, I don't have a background in this at all. I'm just fired up. I mean, none of us want to live in the world that may be coming our way. It's a lot easier to do the work now than it will be after November 3rd.
Amen. You said that perfectly. We should put it on a video clip, Vince.
I mean, for real, I was like, that's the trailer for this week's episode, 100%. And I also, one of my favorite things right now in the world is how often I hear the chorus of, "I don't do this. I've never done this." And more people who are leading and forging ahead. I'm calling them, they're calling them politivists, and elected political activists are starting to win into offices, and we're seeing that in Colorado with the passage of the Accountability and Policing Act immediately this summer during the unrest. It's why Denver quieted back down, was we started to hold our officers accountable. It works. And the more people who are willing to say, "I've never done this before, I'm just fired up," I mean, that motivates me every day to keep going and keep doing this. So, man, I think it is so cool. And I think that it's also very cool that you're walking the walk and going really deep down ballot. I'm going to give a personal acknowledgement right here that Democrat DA Dave Young here in Colorado is persecuting political prisoners and has arrested organizers of peaceful protest here. And he's a Democrat, and those down ballot races really, really matter. And Amy Padden is running against him over there for DA 18. And DAs and judges really, really matter. And one of the first things that Toledo Persists was activated by was Judge Jennifer Brunner running. I've never said it out loud. I've only seen it in writing. But what really brought you to that campaign, and what was it like organizing for such a small campaign out the gate?
For Brunner's campaign specifically, I mean, I think we kind of latched onto her campaign because we saw that the Warren Democrats, or Elizabeth Warren herself, endorsed her, and we said, okay, this is obviously, we trust Elizabeth Warren quite a lot, so this is obviously a race that we should probably get into as well. And we just reached out to her campaign. We had a couple Zoom meetings with her where she was actually on the call, and started, one of her campaign people started sending us huge packages of postcards in the mail. We've been writing so many postcards for her, and we're going to start doing some lit drops for her pretty soon. You know, and I think people typically don't get super excited about the judicial races because, I mean, half the time in a lot of states, like, it doesn't even say D or R next to the judicial candidate's name. Like, you don't even know who you're voting for exactly. But I mean, Jennifer Brunner is just the exact right person for the job, because she's like a former elections lawyer. She was Secretary of State. Like, she has so much experience. So we're really excited about her race in particular.
Yeah, she's very personable, very easy to talk to. And I think one of the things that I'm amazed, because our team had the idea for them to do postcards, and they were like, that sounds great, we'll get you some. So they listened to what we thought, you know, and I just was so, I felt empowered by that. Didn't you, Megan? That was awesome.
Yeah, actually, I kind of forgot about that.
We were doing that in the lockdown. Like, yeah, that was part of what we kept on doing while we couldn't go out of the house. We could at least do that, and she was right with us. So it gave us something to work towards, feel positive about, bond our group with. It was fantastic.
I so appreciate, Megan, what you said too, because I know I'm not alone here in Illinois, where sometimes there'll be a judicial nomination and there's not even anybody running against that person. And so that's a missed opportunity for the Democratic judge that could have been. And I almost want you to just start doing judicial shout outs on Twitter so that people can get more informed about who the judicial nominees are, where they're running, what their background is. This is important information because, as we've seen, there are a lot of cases that end up in state court.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like you guys were just talking about, you know, hopefully we don't have all of these cases that are just like life or death to so many of us progressives. Hopefully they don't make it to the Supreme Court, because we have lower courts that are making better decisions in the first place. You know, and I know in Ohio, it's like our Ohio Supreme Court is like, I think there's 7 people on it. And like 4 of them right now are Republicans, and there's 2 seats open right now. So what does that mean? That means we have the opportunity to basically flip the court. If we can get 2 Democrats on there, that would be huge. And like Melissa said, you know, all we did was like reach out and say, we want to get involved with your campaign. We want to help. And it's amazing, like, what a big role you can end up taking just as a volunteer. It's like, if she is to win that race, like, we did a pretty big thing by taking on so much postcard writing and lit drop and everything for her. Like, we will have done something really great. And I feel like sometimes in the middle of doing all the work, sometimes you don't stop and like take notice of that. Like, wow, if we're successful with what we're doing here, we will change a lot.
Yeah.
Because just thinking about the impact and the consequences of all this, it's just
it absolutely 100%. Like, speaking as a former campaign and a future campaign staffer, you are the lifeblood of. We loved being able to send out, here's 1,000 mailers. Somebody's actually going to take care of that, especially in the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. Historically, Republicans and Blue Dog Republicans have had organizations like the church who were doing that on the ground, organizing, and then Democrats had the unions, but unions don't exist anymore, and so that built-in organizing structure for Democrats just doesn't exist. And so the more and more people who are willing to take on grabbing 40 of their friends, 30 of their friends, 3 of their poor children, and writing postcards into the evening is 100% the lifeblood, and does make so much of the difference in elections where you can count ballots in the thousands, not the millions. Like, it is, thank you. Like, it is absolutely crucial. So the question in putting this into action is that we have this idea, and we know we want to invite our friends over to our house on Saturday nights for Save Democracy Saturdays, and we totally want to model it, but none of our friends want to come. How do we ask people to come without losing all of our friends list? What do you suggest?
I mean, say, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, well, I was just going to say, like, I think that we kind of rope people in when we let them know that we have things for them to do. Like, we keep bringing up the postcard example, but it's certainly not the only thing. But like, for example, postcards, it's like, the typical person will be like, yeah, you know what? I could write a couple postcards. I could string together a few sentences, especially if you just give me a little bit of guidance on what you want me to say. And then we do that, you know, they come over, they sit down, we kind of walk them through what to do. And in no time, somebody who, like you were just saying, says that they've never done this before is well on their way to writing 50 postcards. Like, it's, you just kind of bring people in little by little, I think, because I swear we've had people, and Melissa can like back me up on this, but we've had people come and like start doing the postcards, and a few weeks later they're doing lit drops and they're making signs with us and they're doing a bunch of other stuff because they feel comfortable with us. And so they're like, I feel comfortable with this group now. I want to get more involved. They're telling me that lit dropping or canvassing isn't that big of a deal. Okay, I'll try it because I feel like I'm part of this group now and I want to contribute. At least that's what I think. I don't know.
I think the key is, I mean, it's a cliche, but if you build it, they will come. So you make the structure and you're consistent with the structure. Don't be wishy-washy. You can't be like, maybe it's on Saturday, next week's Tuesday. It has to be the same because people will forget. But if they know, oh yeah, it's always Saturday. Not everybody can come every Saturday, but they're like, oh, I'm going to be there next Saturday. But then you also give them multiple things that they can do. I see us as a giant bucket. I mean, if you ever had kids and go to Great Wolf Lodge and they're like drips in that giant water bucket and then it finally dumps out all over everything. Well, that's what it's like. There's like so many things to do and everybody can put their little drops in and we're just going to dump this bucket over the state of Ohio. We're going to bring all of our Dems with us that way. It's going to wash over like a giant wave.
That's so important. And I just want to, gosh, thank you for your energy, for your dedication. And I want to remind our listeners, just in case the news kind of goes by super fast these days, that progressives are winning. There's been a lot of primaries where progressives have taken over from someone who was, let's just say, too comfy. So the things that you're doing are working. The things that we do together will work. Yes, we can.
Yes, we plan. I like to say yes, we plan as often as I can. Yeah. So I am to gather and I am to understand that people are eager and looking for outlets for their energy to go to. And so really it is I love the build it, they will come mentality because I find absolutely the same thing to be true. I have found myself in the odd position of organizing a large amount of Bloomberg Democrats right now and going into the run, and they just don't know what to do, and they just feel very afraid. This is a great time since I brought it up. Total organic pivot, by the way. Bloomberg, you're not doing enough. Where's the $1 billion you promised? But I'm organizing Bloomberg Democrats right now, and one of the things they love is postcards, phone banking, and something else always available. The other something else I usually do is teaching them how to use social media and registering people to vote links, blasting and turning them into bots effectively, I suppose, senior citizen bots. But the choices, giving people a buffet of activism is definitely a really wonderful thing. And people who are listening and looking for outlets, they exist. They exist in places like Toledo Persists, and I know that they have to exist locally to you. And if they don't create it, it's possible. Look at Meg and Melissa; they've done it.
Yay, Warren women! Thank you so much. You guys are an inspiration, and I really hope, very selfishly, that there's a Persist in every single state. You guys are amazing.
Everywhere, every county, every state, every locality. If you don't have a Persist near you, get in touch with Megan and Melissa and ask them how you start a chapter locally. So, real quick, how does everybody stay in touch with you? And then we also always like to ask our guests who our listeners should be sending their small dollar donations to right now, and who really needs it in this crunch time down ballot.
stay in touch with us. We're on Twitter at Toledo Persists. And as far as where your money should go, you know, we just talked about Jennifer Bruner, who's running for Ohio Supreme Court. I've given a few of the reasons why you should maybe vote for her, but that's one candidate that we're supporting.
We support a couple more down ballot candidates. We are working with Nancy Larson. She's running for the Ohio State House, District 47. She is very, very winnable. She's been upgraded to winnable by the Ohio House Democrats. So, and before it was quite a long shot. So I'd say check out Nancy's website, nancyfor.us, spelled out like that, Nancy for us, nancy4.us. And then we also are working with Nick Rubando, and he is the Congressional District 5, trying to flip the 5th here in Ohio. That's what he says. And he has taken this race from 35-62 Trump in 2018 to within 7 points. And that was like a month ago. He came and talked to our group and gave us that number, and we were blown away. So I expect that it's even closer now. So you go check out Nick Rubando's site. That's spelled out NICKRUBANDO.com. And he is like a young Sherrod Brown. You're gonna love him.
He's the candidate to watch for sure. He is someone that I think we'll be seeing a lot of, definitely.
That's incredible. And, you know, I want to mention just what you guys just said. The anger, I know that Fox News lives in a different world, but in actual reality, the anger and backlash against Trump and Trumpism and all of his cronies is very real. And so there's a chance now like never before, just like Elizabeth Warren said, the door is cracked. Let's not just tiptoe in, let's bust it down.
Here, yes.
Yes.
We're with ya.
I am fired up. I am ready to go. It was so lovely to have Toledo Persists' Megan and Melissa on a plan for that this week. Any other last little acorns of wisdom? Drop them now.
I want to close my little portion with this, because this quote from RBG goes to the heart. And she said, real change, enduring change happens one step at a time.
Amen. That's beautiful.
All right. We're gonna talk a little bit more about how to take those first steps after a quick break. Please stick with us or hit that fast forward 30 seconds twice. We'll be right back.
The Boston we love is a city that takes care of each other, where hard work meets big dreams with grit and resilience. But for too many, during this pandemic and well before, it's been impossible to dream when you're fighting to hold on. Fighting to afford to stay, fighting for our kids, fighting a system that wasn't built for us, doesn't speak our languages, doesn't hear our voices. I'm Michelle Wu, and I'm running for mayor to make Boston a city for everyone. I'm a mom, a daughter of immigrants, and I've lived my whole life knowing what it's like to feel unseen and unheard even when you most need help. My parents came to America with no money and no connections, not speaking English. When my mom started struggling with mental illness, I became her caregiver and raised my sisters. It's the struggles and dreams of my family and families across our neighborhoods that I've carried to City Hall for the last 7 years. Where together, we've broken barriers, passed groundbreaking legislation, changed the face of government, and changed the conversation about what is just and what is possible. And there's so much more we need to do.
We can build wealth in all of our communities.
Value public education.
Plan for our neighborhoods, not big developers.
We can invest in housing we can afford.
And transportation that serves everyone.
We can truly fund public health for safety and healing.
And deliver on a city Green New Deal for clean air and water, healthy homes, and a brighter future for our children.
Y hacerlo ahora.
Now's the time to build on the activism of generations before. With the urgency of this moment and this movement, we're ready to go beyond fighting the system to hear us. Now is the time for us to lead.
Welcome welcome back to A Plan for That podcast. Boy, Vince, it sure feels good to be inspired by people who are making the dream every day, fighting to change our world.
It really, like, in a thousand million different ways, it feels so good. I mean, these people exist. They exist everywhere. And I mean, if you're listening to this show, it is very, very likely that you are one of these people. And we exist, I mean, in so many different ways. The organizing structure, I want to help enable people to get to work. And I also, the other side of the coin, where I need a plan and I need help being put to work. And it feels good to be able to each week talk to somebody else who's operating on one side of that coin and finding a lot of success. And especially, I mean, like you said, the women who are driving this movement, it's always inspiring to talk to a group like Toledo Persists and Megan and Melissa.
Absolutely. Megan and Melissa have inspired me to continue their work, to try to do something every single day, and to tell everybody I know to do the same thing. They are just amazing. And they really, we don't say this enough. They really embody the paradigm between people who have been in the field and have organized before, and people like me who are just a ball of energy looking for some direction and a place to go.
And you know what? On exactly that note, I really want to acknowledge that no matter where you are on the spectrum, it can be hard sometimes to find where that energy goes and find the place to show up, which is why I'm grateful to groups like Toledo Persists that make it so easy. I shared this on my Twitter @VinnyChant over the weekend because I'm learning out loud, and I make a lot of calls for people to come out and to be out. And so I also wanted to hold myself accountable. Erin and I do it in the accountability check every week, and I guess oh my goodness, I'm growing, I'm learning. What a scary concept, everybody. But in an effort to hold myself accountable to that, I shared on Twitter that there's a group in Denver called General Assembly, and it's a loose collective of organizers and group leaders who get together and kind of plan dissent and plan protest and plan civic engagement and plan action and plan rallies, and it's really where the heartbeat of the grassroots kind of grows out of here. And if you happen to be in Colorado, I really want to shout out all of my friends over at the subreddit, our Denver protests. There's the admins on there are good human beings who come out of the General Assembly and come out of the grassroots here, who do a really proficient job of vetting events and vetting things. And so if you're in Colorado and you're looking for things to go to, check out our Denver protests on Reddit. But the General Assembly is this thing that, as a journalist who covered protest in Colorado for years, literally my first stories here were the Freedom Riders meeting with Mayor Hancock. He was late, had a police escort, and then now fighting alongside and marching alongside a lot of these same protesters. I have a ton of respect for them. And they invited me down to come to this event, which is public. And I walked down and I sat 45 feet away from it. And then I got up and I left because I just got anxious about showing up. And I got in my own head, and it was intimate and it was small, and I don't do small groups particularly well. On my walk home, I couldn't believe that I'd walked an hour to get to this thing, and now I was walking an hour home to not have gone to this thing, and I had totally wussed out, and I shared it on Twitter, and Erin was one of the many voices who got into my DMs.
First and foremost, I have very deep feelings for Vince as a friend, and I felt bad that he felt so intimidated and that he didn't have someone there to go with him. I've never been a super social person in small groups myself. My husband can tell you that the first thing I look for in a party pre-COVID times is the alcohol so that I can take the edge off. But the one thing that I will always do, no matter how nervous or worried that I might say or do the wrong thing, is I will always reach out to someone who's nearby and looking for help.
And you know what? That was echoed all in my DMs. I took so much love and just I was really glad that I had shared it, like sincerely glad that I shared it, because a lot of people I've been talking to all summer, a lot of people I've been marching alongside in Denver, Erin, people around the country, friend of the show, Tahid Chapel, is going to come on and talk to us about nonprofit journalism, who is a human that I just respect up and down for his ability to show up. Were sliding into public open responses with their own stories of times they had walked away, or times that they had found their own difficulty in showing up. But we're in a series. We're not it's not a series of singularities. It's ongoing. It's ever building. And I also recognize that I was silly. I'm obviously going to go to the next one of these events that I can make it to, and I'm very excited to go and to talk to the people who reached out and said, we're so sorry you didn't feel like you could walk over and say, hey, what did we do to make you feel unwelcome? And it's not anything on the group. It was just literally my headspace that day. And for so many of us, I now recognize that we can get in these situations where it's just a headspace for a day, and don't beat yourself up over it. Take that day off, because election day is not a finish line. In fact, inauguration day isn't a finish line. Election day 2024 isn't going to be a finish line. Democracy is a process that we always are going to be actively involved in and actively fighting in, and we're always going to have next time, I promise.
That is so inspirational. And, honestly, I'm going to make you feel better, because I didn't even get my check-in call with Vince this week. And it could be why I slid into a fit of rage. But I literally said to my husband last night, okay, we're in the midst of a full fascist friggin' takeover, and I need to inspire people. How the hell am I going to do that? So the feelings are real. The worry is real. But I can share this, listeners. I took just an hour away, not even a full day, because I literally am addicted, and I will fully admit that right now, because I must fight with every single thing that this administration tries to do. But I took an hour because I needed to play with my son. He'd already finished his schoolwork. I had already looked over his homework, and it was time to just reward him for some hard work. And you know what, guys? It was a reward for me too. I got to just turn on, tune in, drop out just for an hour, just for an hour. And it renewed me for the show. And as always, Vince, your energy and your inspiration and our wonderful guests have completely flipped the script. And now I'm ready to go and ready to face what comes day after day after day.
I am too. I draw my inspiration from Erin every week. I'm fired up, ready to go is the response. And I love hearing how your fits of rage explode, and you get to express yourself, and then you always put it into action, and you find the down ballot energy and the race. And anytime that we get to talk, it's funny, because I'm so angry, I'm doing this, and this is what I'm doing, I can't anger, and I know more of this, and it's a lot of like swears to actions, and it reminds me that, oh yep, that's what we're doing. We gotta step up, and we gotta take our actions. And my accountability list this week, speaking of taking actions, this is such a good time to slide into it, is incredibly brief, and it's related. I went to Melanated Mic this week, which is a local open mic for Black, Indigenous people of color in the Front Range, and they're in their 7th week of existence, and it's become kind of a really cool community collective for just voicing your thoughts, and all voices are welcome, so all voices are heard, and definitely take the chance to express themselves. But there was an activist who's been present all summer. He's lived in Colorado for 7 months now, and he mentioned that he has never been to the mountains, which for those who don't know, the mountains are about an hour away from Denver by like even car at this point. Like any way you want to get there, it's going to take an hour to get there, to like the foothills, and even further to get to anything that anybody wants to really talk about. And there's a real inaccessibility to the mountains, especially for people who rely on public transit. But the idea that he had moved to Colorado, lived here for 7 months, and all he had been doing was protesting, rippled and definitely was the conversation on a lot of people's tongues throughout the rest of the evening. And And my accountability this week was to remember that, and to remember to take the day to recharge and to actually be efficient, because we need to fight at 100%, because this fight's going to be long. We can't fight forever at 60% and expect greatness.
I am still working for 5 campaigns. I'm in it for the long haul. I will not quit. But I want to give a special shout out to a couple of campaigns. Number one is the Senator Espy, who is going for senator in Mississippi. This is a Senate race that people have just really slept on. And quite frankly, the polling that I am lucky enough to get on Twitter with the Warren organizers, who are amazing, tell me that he's within a point. So how do I say this delicately? We have funded losing races in Kentucky. And I'm not saying that there isn't anger against Mitch McConnell. Trust me, I have visions of what I want to do to that man. However, we need to focus on the races that are actually winning. And it's really hard for me to say that because I hate him so much. But I need you, listeners, I need you to really think about where you're sending your money. And we need to send it to the candidates who are within a win range, just down a couple of points or even ahead. We need to take the Senate. It is so important. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, and I talked with Vince during the break, is the idea of spoiler candidates that are making things hard in Georgia. So, number one, I agree that Matt Lieberman should drop out. However, that being said, he will still be on the ballot. So his dropout might feel wonderful, but visually it won't matter. And to that effect, I think it's much more important when we say Matt Lieberman dropout, which is a cute hashtag. It really is. Believe me. We need to change it to vote Warnock for Georgia. Warnock has your back. Whatever it takes, just create a hashtag with Reverend Raphael Warnock. He is within a win in Georgia, okay? And whoever's voting for Raphael Warnock is also voting for John Ossoff. So don't forget, there are two seats in Georgia. With everything that's going on, a 2-seat win just sounds real good to me, Vince.
It really does. And if you're a regular listener of A Plan for That, first of all, very cool. And second of all, you are definitely familiar with Reverend Warnock. We have played his ads on this very show. So it's, you know, it is important to remember, especially in a time of, I don't want to call it divisive politics, because politics have always been divisive, but in a time when we take a little bit extra glory to be a little bit extra loud about our opponents, it is incredibly important to remember to also raise the candidates that we are supporting up, and to be able to talk about policy positions and pros of the people that we want to see win, not just the negatives of the people that we want to see lose. So remember, everybody, Georgia's important. Warnock needs to win, and that is as important as Lieberman needing to drop out. In fact, it's more important because the name that people fill out on the ballot, they're both still going to be available to check out regardless of who drops out at this point. And we need to make sure people remember Warnock good, Lieberman bad, more than just Lieberman bad. The old saying used to go, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And I was definitely raised on that, which I'll admit has created a problem in some politics right now. Specifically, our presidential race with Joe Biden was, we need him to win. So I say Joe Biden wins, and then my brain says, now if you can't think of anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And for a long time, that meant that I wasn't saying anything nice about, you know, the future leader of the Democratic Party, which isn't a good look. I'll be very honest. That's not what we're doing here. So I did the work, and I had to put it in, and I had to go find something that I liked that that he's doing that I could say something nice about, because we have to do this. We have to find pros for the candidates that we support, not just cons for the candidates that we don't. And so I implore you to all to go to joebiden.com and check out his policy positions and check it all out. If it feels better, go to kamalaharris.com and read it from Kamala's point of view, because, you know, that is a good lens on it. I, as a parent, found that Joe Biden has a universal pre-K and kindergarten public funded program plan, and I didn't know that. It's adapted, it seems, from an Elizabeth Warren education platform position that I just hadn't really singled in and realizing existed. And when it came up to me, I was like, oh, that feels really good to know exists. Let me go learn more. I went to the website, I read more, I did a little bit more research, and now I have something that I can go talk to people about very specifically. Go support Joe Biden for that alone is my message right now. Erin, have you found anything about Joe Biden you like?
Absolutely, Vince. That was really well stated. So I can tell you that a lot of the plans that I like with Joe Biden did come from Elizabeth Warren. So it's not real hard to like them. But the one thing that I have stayed consistent in on Twitter and in life, pretty much everywhere, is whatever else you can say about Joe, please know this: the man has a good heart. It's the truth. He shows it. Even when he makes mistakes, it was always in the right intention. And regardless of what I happen to think of some of his campaign advisors who are in for the big money, I do know that Joe is going to do what he feels is the best for Americans and for their families. And if there's ever a moment where he steps the wrong way on that, he will listen to the crowd that becomes enraged. So we're dealing with an infinitely more human person, and we're dealing with a person who has a lot of experience in government. So we're going to be a lot better off. So let's go, Joe.
He does care, and he does listen, and he does want to update it. He just needs to be given access to it. So support Joe. It feels really good to find nice things to say about candidates that we support, not just mean things to say about candidates that we don't, because, you know, it's big structural fun. It is all about, you know, the things that we say, the energy that we put out there. It really does matter. And if we want to plan for a progressive future and a plan that actually builds out of this mess, then we need to also, you know, set the intention above this mess. You know, it sounded really corny in 2016 when Michelle Obama said her famous go low, go high line. But, you know, more and more we have to remember that if we want to plan to fight for a better world, then we have to be willing to live in that better world while we do it.
That's so true. And even though I agree with that and try to do those actions every day, I will shamelessly admit that there is a person on Twitter who later after the show I will ask if I can publicly shout out. So right now they're nameless, who is just a basket of profanity in the most cathartically releasing way that I just, oh, this man should produce daily meditations just so that you can laugh a little bit.
Well, in no way would I ever want to imply that using salty language, or I always like to say that being nice is not the same thing as being kind, and being kind is not the same thing as being good. You have to be able to combine enough of all of them and to become a decent human being. And you know what? I will plug a foul-mouthed, angry Twitter feed myself right now. If anybody wants to go see a much more F-word laden version of myself, I am available at Vinny Chant both on Twitter and on Instagram. And I also am more and more pushing through video and live streams over on my Facebook right now. I am still using that cesspool, but we have to exist, unfortunately, in everywhere that they exist to help fight back and against it. So get on my Facebook page and please be a good voice there over at Producer Vince. And as always, follow the show on Twitter at Plan for That Pod, PLANFORTHATPOD. I don't know why I spelled it. Erin, do you want to have anything to plug this week?
Yes, I want to give a shout out to the down ballot races. Specifically, I'm thinking of Florida 18, which is Pam Keith. Pam Keith is a voice on Twitter that is never, ever afraid to call things out the way that they are, with a plan on how to move forward, and really just brings that Elizabeth Warren energy that we need so much, you guys.
I skipped my candidate shout-outs. Oh, no. You know what? Then I kind of did it while we were talking to Megan and Melissa earlier in the show, but I'll plug her again because this race is just wildly important. Democrat Dave Young, he is the DA, is currently persecuting political prisoners, organizers of peaceful protests that have turned into police riots all throughout the summer, were coordinatedly rounded up and arrested with falsified charges that included kidnapping, despite the police having access to police cruisers and cars that could just drive them calmly from the scene. They insist that peaceful protesters surrounded and kept them entrapped inside of the Aurora police station, which is nonsense. This is absolute nonsense, and it has been acknowledged as such by many of the elected leaders here in Colorado. So we need to beat Dave Young, and in order to do that, we need to elect Amy Padden. So everybody go to Find Padden for Colorado. She is running in the 18th district, and her voice is so vital right now. We have, it is so rare that, anti-police Vince is pushing a DA race. It is important that we also fight inside of the structures that currently exist while we work to radically alter and change them. And so Amy Padden deserves your support out here in Colorado just as much as a friend of the show and just wonderful Warren Democrat Eliza Orlins over in Manhattan, who is running for district attorney in Manhattan. Also, get involved in those down ballot races. Judges matter, as Megan and Melissa talked about. DAs matter. Every race matters, every state house matters, and we need we need that army of progressives in place if we have any future to really hope for. And I see a hopeful future, Erin.
Absolutely, as do I, Vince. And I've said it on Twitter 1,000,000 times, and I'll say it 1,000,000 more. An army of progressives is coming.
Let's get to work. And if this is always going to be a resource for everybody who wants to get to work, make sure you have smashed that subscribe button, that you are listening every week to a plan for that. In typical organizing in typical organizing fashion, make sure that you ask 5 of your friends to also subscribe, download, like, and review to a plan for that. And then that all 5 of them also go ask 5 of their friends or post it to Facebook, because the only way that we're going to be able to really build this grassroots community is with your help. Please make sure you subscribe also, because you don't want to miss our guest next week, who is a friend of the show, Tahid Chaphill, who runs a not-for-profit partisan newspaper in the Northeast, is a veteran of the Washington Post and the Philadelphia Inquirer, is a cannabis activist, and just is also one of the most brilliant people that I've ever had the pleasure of speaking to, and I really look forward to our conversation on the need to expand not-for-profit and possibly even partisan journalism in the United States right now.